Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's CV-STAC summer webinar on increasing Motorcoach seatbelt use to improve passenger safety. Before I introduce our presenter, I want to place today's session within a larger regional effort that brings us together. My name is Matt Mann. I'm the manager of research at the UMass Transportation Center. UMassSafe is the University of Massachusetts Amherst multidisciplinary traffic research program. Our role is not limited to conducting research. We work at the intersection of crash and inspection data, transportation engineering, human factors, program design, technical assistance, and stakeholder collaboration. For more than 2 decades, UMass has worked with FMCSA, SAP agencies, state DOTs, licensing agencies, law enforcement researchers, industry partners to help turn evidence into practical safety programming. That research to implementation role is the foundation of both the Commercial Vehicle Safety Technical Assistance Center, CV-STAC, and the Eastern Service Center, CMV, Safety Data Collaborative. CV-STAC gives regional partners a place to access and share research tools, promising practices, and technical assistance. Our FY25 work carries that model forward through reoccurring webinars, structured meetings, and interactive forums intended to exchange insight, identify shared risks, and translate evidence into coordinated safety strategies, and useful CV-STAC resources. Motorcoach safety is paramount as motorcoaches transport hundreds of millions of passengers each year. And while motorcoaches remain one of the safest modes of highway travel when serious crashes, such as rollovers, occur, the consequences can be severe. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, rollover crashes account for more than half of motorcoach occupant fatalities, and approximately 2/3 of those fatalities involve passenger ejection. Research consistently shows that proper seatbelt use is one of the most effective ways to reduce fatalities and serious injuries in these crashes. Today's webinar highlights the work by researchers from the University of Massachusetts Transportation Center in partnership with the Sarah's Wish Foundation in developing and evaluating a series of low-cost, practical strategies designed to encourage passengers to buckle up before and during their trip. Dr. Plotnikoff is a research fellow at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He received his PhD degree in civil engineering from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and his MS degree in mechanical engineering from Moscow State Technical University in Russia. His main area of research are related to transportation finance, motorcoach safety, highway curb design, and innovative aviation technology. So without further ado, I am pleased to turn the program over to Dr. Plotnikoff.
Matt, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see you here. My name is Michael Plotnikov, and I'm principal investigator on a series of Motorcoach seatbelt studies conducted with the sponsorship of NHTSA, Federal Highway Administration, and by Sarah's Wish Foundation, non-profit organization dedicated to motorcoach safety. Today, we are going to discuss best practices of promotional actions aimed to increase seatbelt use on motorcoaches. And now let me just show you our slides. Okay, so as we know that the motorcoach is one of the safest modes of highway travel. However, according to the National Highway Transportation Safety Boards, there is hundreds of fatalities and thousands of life-changing injuries on motorcoaches. So the fatal crashes occurs across the entire country, so better to be prepared. And as you know, the most common device to protect people during the crashes and the least expensive device is a seatbelt, which well proved on other modes of highway travel. It is worth mentioning, if you can see from the video, that unbelted passengers present a lot of danger, not only to themselves, but also to other passengers. There is a number of recent, very resonated examples which happen just here for this purpose of this presentation in New England area. Many people saying, well, we hear something happen in California, something happened elsewhere. No, it happened everywhere. It happened every year in New England. So it is very important for us to bring a light to this issue, especially because now we do have most of the motor coaches equipped with seatbelt. According to NHTSA, seatbelt in motor coaches can reduce occupant fatalities and injuries to about 40 to 50%. And in case, when we talk about rollovers, this number will increase to 77%. In addition, average inpatient cost for the passengers who don't use seatbelts about 55 to 60% higher than those who use seatbelts. And what we can observe at the same time, we can see that the motor coach use right now is very low. This slide presents effect of promotional actions in New England. And you can see, particularly on the route along between Boston and Springfield, Massachusetts, as you can see, before promotional actions were implemented, average seatbelt use was well below 5%. What it translates to, if you have, say, 50 passengers on the board of the bus, it's only 1 or 2 people buckle up. After we implement our set of promotional actions, both on board of Motorcoach and at the bus terminal and the platform, we were able to increase this number more than tenfold. Key takeaways of the study. First of all, we found that the passengers need friendly reminders to buckle up. Most of them knows that the seatbelts save lives. But at the same time, they lack culture. They do not have a culture of having seatbelts on motor coaches, or even say other buses, such as school buses, which sometimes also travel at highways. Also, we found that promotional actions work, and the increase of seatbelt use as a result of implementation of these actions is very dramatic. We found that verbal messages are the most effective, particularly those which are delivered by drivers. In addition, we found that graphic messages, when consistent, they represent a good supplemental reminder to the passengers. For example, when they already travel and they leave their seat and go to the bathroom, when they return back to their seat, they see this nice reminder and typically they buckle up. We also found that the graphic message consistency is extremely important. Where the messages which delivered verbally better to be more personal. So first of all, some people may say, we do see these promotional messages on the board of buses all the time. We hear we say something about seatbelts. That's very true. There is existing messages on the regarding seatbelts on motor coaches. However, most of these existing seatbelt messages are not consistent, poorly placed, and overall not very effective. In order to find out what the passenger's perspective on use seatbelts, why they don't use it, what it is provided and mandated by Congress, we found that, interesting enough and not surprising for many, more than 3/3 of the people believe that the seatbelts are important. So this means that we do have a good audience to bring promotional actions in. If the trend would be opposite, that would be much more challenging. Also, during the focus groups, we explore what actions are most effective. And of course, not surprisingly, message is the closest to the action. Okay, when passengers sitting already at their seat and the bus, motor coach, is ready to depart, are most effective. And verbal messages are the key. We also found that the key is not the only verbal message itself, but also how it is developed. We'll talk about further. So, as I said, we found that graphic message should be consistent. And as a result, we introduced a special campaign logo. The campaign logo was designed by UMass Transportation Center in collaboration with Sarah Zwisch Foundation and the graphical artist. And it was tested with the passengers. It received a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback, saying that it's very catchy. It's saying it's easy to remember. But most important, they describe it as persuading them to buckle up. So we developed 3 promotional actions to be implemented on board of the bus. 3. If you study in marketing, you know that there is a rule of 3 actions. If you want to bring someone's attention, people tend to forget, even if one action is very, very catchy, very nice, people still tend to forget. Most of the people, we're talking about 60%, what was said just in 20 minutes. When you have several actions, several messages, people tend to remember. When we developed these actions, we were looking to develop them in a such manner so they were simple, effective, inexpensive, and easy to implement. Because we understand we will have a lot of opposition from different ends. People will say, well, that may be expensive, that may be a hassle, and we did have some questions like this. So the first message was a verbal message by Motorcoach operator for the purpose of consistency, because unfortunately, most of the coach drivers, they're not very great public speakers. We develop a simple script. And the first stage, we ask drivers to just read the script. And the script was simple. Your safety is our first priority. That's why our motor coaches are equipped with seatbelts. Please help us to ensure your safety and keep your seatbelt buckled up while the bus is in motion. Is it the best one? Practical applications show that, in fact, when drivers use their own words properly structured, the message could be much more effective. At the same time, we also observe that in some cases, when it's not properly structured and not properly delivered, it could be much less effective. The next action to improve the Motorcoach seatbelt use was a graphic message at the back of the seat. In our study, we use 5x5 sticker attached to the back of each seat, about at the eye level of the average adult passenger. So this message, this catchy message, always entire route in front of them. They forgot about this. They look at this message once, twice, 3 times, and then finally decided why just not to buckle up. And finally, the third action, which was developed again at the first stage of the study, was exterior signage. Initially, we developed a poster board which placed on the platform and should be handled by the drivers when he arrived to a new location, unless motor coach carrier owned the platform, which is rarely the case. And the second option was placing the same design sticker on the door of the bus. Actions receive negative response. Why? Well, poster board, it was too difficult to handle. Driver has tons of other responsibilities. Sometimes they arrive, there is 50 passengers waiting for the bus, which came with a big delay, has no time to do it. Besides, sometimes it's dark on the platform and there is a safety risk that passengers will stumble over this board. The second action raised concern from the motor coach owners. They said, hey, we spent $30,000 to do custom paint of this motor coach. We don't want to damage it. So as a result, we developed a new design. A new design was a placement of such message at the platform, at the bus terminal. Not only it raised much less concern from both passengers and motor coach operators, but also it was found much more effective. Why? Because passengers can observe it well before arrival for boarding. Second, one message can serve multiple buses and multiple companies. And as a result of the fact that we found these actions work really well, we expanded action to the bus terminal. And again, we use a simple rule of thirds, and we have 3 messages at the terminal. The message by dispatcher during the bus arrival and landing and unloading, graphic message located at bus terminal waiting area, and finally, graphic message located at the ticket counter. Well, the first one, verbal message by dispatcher, again, initially, we use the same script as we use for the drivers, because we are thinking it will help us to enforce the message. It turned to be not exactly the case, I'll tell about later. Nevertheless, this message was perhaps the most effective message outside of the bus. The second message was a placement of the graphic message at the bus terminal area. The preferred placement was at electronic screens. Electronic displays provide a number of advantages over static sign. First of all, as you can see, it's very large sign. It's visible from anywhere. Second, you can display different messages or display them dynamically to attract more attention. And third, you can post messages if, for example, in some areas, such as Springfield Union Station terminal, have historic buildings which do not want to interfere with its design. Well, in some cases, unfortunately, electronic screens not available. And that's the example of Boston Union Station. So here we have regular poster board, which placed at each gate. We found it also work, maybe not as effective as a large electronic signs, but we hope it's a matter of time when all transportation facilities will be equipped with a large electronic displays. Finally, the third action was placed at the ticket counter. And we were asked a lot of questions, particularly in our UMass community, why we don't go to the ticket counter anymore. We order everything online. And that's very true. Most of the young people do not go to the ticket counter. However, the second largest group of population which use motor coaches, in some areas, it's actually the first largest, is elderly. And they are not very familiar and comfortable with technology. They still prefer to have a printed script. That's why we found that the poster board at the ticket counter is right at the spot. So as a result, we developed the entire kit of 6 actions, and this was designed to be distributed to motor coach operators throughout the country. It includes the script announcement and the graphic messages of promotional actions. It is highly customizable, so certain operators, if for example they would like to have their own bus appears on the logo, like you can see this Peter Pan, they can customize font. So basically do everything to match their company design and their vision of these messages. In fact, we encourage them implement just those actions which they will find most appropriate. Because as I said, in some situations, unfortunately, you simply cannot implement all actions. However, we're saying that at least 3 actions have to be implemented. And the key is obviously driver's message. So what the next steps? The next steps is we need to work with government agencies, because we found that the training and the guidance are the key for successful implementation of promotional actions. Again, you can have these actions, you can download them, and you implement them and find they don't work. First of all, it has to be wholehearted effort of each individual company, okay? They should do it not just to put a check mark. They have to do it to increase seatbelt use. When we have managers who really show the effort, the seatbelt use on certain routes approach those on automobile. At the same time, when people do not know how to implement their promotional actions or implement it incorrectly, the effect will be relatively insignificant. That's why we believe that we need to get governmental agency, both on the federal level and the state level, get involved. So regulatory agencies on federal level is obviously FMCSA, and on the state level, it should be, for example, in Massachusetts, Department of Public Utilities, which oversee the Motorcoach operations in the state. In some other states, such as Connecticut, it could be Connecticut Department of Transportation. Again, when government get involved, everything will start rolling much better. Right now, we're in the process of adding some slides to guide Motorcoach driver training, particularly dedicated to verbal message announcement. We're developing best practices, again, for FMCSA, for nationwide distribution. And with our state regulatory agencies, we also developed brochures which could be distributed to enforce whatever proposed by FMCSA. That will conclude my presentation.